In the vast expanse of the Gamma 7 distribution central, the air was dense with the sharp, industrial scent of machine oil mingled with the subtle sweetness of melted plastic. Maria Santos inhaled deeply, the aroma grounding her amidst the chaos of sprawling trade terminals that thrummed like the heartbeat of a bustling city. Only this city spanned light years and star systems. As a seasoned space courier, Maria had seen her share of strange packages and peculiar shipments. But tonight, something felt different about her hands. Clad in worn delivery gloves, brushed against the cool metal of the cargo container as she prepared for one last delivery of the evening. The low hum of overhead lights buzzed steadily, echoing the rhythm of her thoughts as her augmented reality display blinked an urgent warning. Route reconfiguration unauthorized. A flicker of concern crossed Maria's features. Reconfiguration alerts were rare an indicator of unapproved adjustments to the pre-programmed navigation routes, often signs of interference or worse. Leaning forward, Maria secured the reinforced clamps and pried open the container. Inside, beneath layers of ordinary packages, a curious crate caught her eye. It was unmarked, except for an intricate alien sigil, etched with precise geometry that glowed faintly a pale blue. Placing a cautious hand on the crate's surface, Maria felt a subtle pulsing vibration, an almost imperceptible rhythm like a heartbeat. Yet utterly foreign dot, she glanced around the dimly lit terminal. The usual drone of conversations and movement seemed to fade, swallowed by the strange aura emanating from the crate. A soft mechanical whirring began, accompanied by shimmering lights flickering like distant stars trapped beneath the metal lid. The crate was more than a package. It was a mystery, a relic of ancient conflicts whispered across the galaxy's dark corners. Maria's pulse quickened, not with fear, but with the ancient thrill of discovery she hadn't felt since her first delivery job decades ago. She pressed a control panel, and the containment field around the crate shimmered, locking into place with an almost sentient precision. The significance of what she carried was beyond her understanding, yet crystal clear in its warning. This delivery was no ordinary assignment. The Gamma 7 sector was a nexus of cultures and species, where humanity's reach intertwined with myriad alien civilizations. Trade was the peaceful front of a galaxy riddled with tension, secrets, and unspoken wars. Maria's cargo contained a fragment of that hidden turmoil, a weapon, a message, or perhaps a key to secrets that could shift the balance of power among starfaring races. Strapping the crate safely in the hold, she initiated the ship's startup sequence. The vibration of the engines thrummed through her bones, steady and reassuring against the backdrop of silent cosmic vastness outside her viewport. Yet a sense of unease lingered. The usual route was peppered with interference. Navigation feeds fluctuated unpredictably. The glow of distant stars distorted by flickering data streams her microcoms crackled with. Bursts of static before an urgent message shattered the calm. Warning, artifact active. Do not expose or permit access. The voice was fragmented, distorted, yet unmistakably dire. Maria's grip tightened on the control stick. She was no longer just a courier. She was a guardian of a secret that might ignite the fragile peace among species. Journey ahead was uncertain and perilous. Shadows of past wars loomed large, and in this lonely cockpit, Maria braced herself to navigate not only the physical routes through space, but the convoluted intrigues of interstellar conflict. The fate of many might rest on this delivery, and the resolve of one human willing to face the unknown. The ship cut a thin silver path through Gamma 7's outbound lanes, and Maria Santos could feel the crate in the rear like a second heartbeat out of sync, insistent, impossible to ignore. She dialed the inertial dampers down half a notch, listening for the almost musical warble that told her the courier's old frame was still honest, still predictable, still hers. The rest of the night wasn't. The HUD crawled with faint interference, a snowfall of static that didn't belong to traffic, weather, or legal jammers. Someone was brushing our perimeter. Curious or hunting, both were bad. Route reconfiguration unauthorized. The nav repeated for the third time, softer now, as if embarrassed to bring bad news. Maria tapped the screen with a knuckle. "You talk, I drive," she said, and breathed once through her nose. Machine oil and heated plastic lingered in the cabin filter Gamma 7 smell following her into vacuum. It steadied her. So did the weight of the wrench taped under the console and the patch on her sleeve. 10 years older than the paint. Santos Courier Cooperative. Ambient lighting dipped toward blue. She glanced back. The alien sigil on the crate brightened. Lines within lines like tide patterns frozen in metal. A low resonance spilled into the cockpit felt in teeth and chest before it could be heard. With it came images she couldn't claim as memory. A red horizon under 3 moons. A library with books that hissed when opened. Classroom with a floor of glass. She blinked hard, and the stars returned to what they were called, unbothered. Beautiful. Final destination. Sector K-49, Terra Nova Civic Station, the autopilot announced. The station populated the viewport in increments. First a scatter of beacon lights, then the faint shadow of ring segments, then the busy geometry of docks and spokes and orbital streets. K-49 always looked like a city that had learned to keep its voice down. Efficient. Polite. Never loud unless something had gone wrong. Tonight, it had gone wrong. 3 defense drones rose off the approach lattice like patient birds. Maria felt the polite version of a threat in the narrowband ping. Identify, slow, submit to escort. She slowed, identified, did not submit. Instead, she let the optical camo spool up cheap civilian grade. Not designed to fool military corps, but good enough to make computers doubt their first answer. The drones hesitated. Doubt was a gap you could fly a courier through. Don't be heroes, she whispered, and sliced the ship between 2 streams of inbound traffic. The drones resettled on their rails, as if she had never been there. She exhaled. The crate exhaled too, or that's how it felt, the hum shifting almost to contentment. You and me both, Maria said, not liking that she had just spoken to a box. Combs, shredded since departure, stitched themselves long enough to deliver a torn message. Artifact active do not exposure control, and then a hard carrier tone. The kind bureaucrats used when they wanted to sound calm while the floor burned. Maria killed the channel before the tone could drill a hole between her eyes. Whatever the crate was, someone wanted it dark, quiet, and very far away from decision makers. She picked Dock 12 on habit. Dock 12 had a supervisor who didn't ask questions unless asking was safer. And tonight, nothing about questions felt safe. The station granted her a narrow approach, and the ship trembled into the pressurized sleeve. Iron and gasket smells replacing the clean metal of space. The moment the clamps kissed the hull, the crate changed its rhythm pulse to tremor, tremor to hail. No sound, only the certainty of being addressed. Maria stood. The cabin floor was warm through her boots. She unsealed the hatch, and the station's air folded over her shoulders, like a coat she had left in storage. Recycled citrus, sanitizer, hints of old coffee and older arguments. 2 dockhands waited beyond the threshold, both wearing the tired smiles of people who had just realized their shift would not end on time. The taller one opened his mouth to speak. The lights went out. Not darkness stations hate the dark, but the soft emergency version of light. That turned faces into maps and edges into suggestion. A hum took the place of 100 small noises. Fans, vents, conveyor belts, conversations. In the hum, the crate's presence was a lighthouse. Maria stepped past the dockhands before either could be brave on protocol, keyed the cargo hatch, and watched the alien lines on the lid answer her touch. Not open. Acknowledge. Problem? The taller dockhand asked, voice steady because he wanted it to be. Power ripple, Maria said, and her grin felt like something she'd borrowed. Your grid is wheezing. She locked the hatch and palmed the mag seals for a second time. I'll sign off here. No need to wake a supervisor. Supervisor's already awake, said a third voice. Soft shoes, careful posture, badge held like a question. The woman who wore it was mid-40s, with the expression of someone who didn't mind being disliked if the paperwork survived. Manifest, she said. Maria offered the scannable strip. The supervisor's reader blinked once. Unlisted freight, the woman said, and didn't raise her voice. Origin Gamma 7, route variance flagged. Escort refused. She lifted her eyes. Ms. Santos, unlisted freight makes me nervous. Me too, Maria said. May we be nervous later? She nodded toward the blackout. Your lights have opinions. The supervisor glanced upward. The emergency hue had slid from soft gold toward the same blue that lived inside the crate. The dockhands noticed it too and tried not to. The crate's hum climbed another fraction. Maria felt her molars answer. "Look," she said, and surprised herself by telling something like the truth. "It's an artifact. Active. I don't have clearance to know more, which is annoying because I am 30 centimeters from it. My instructions are to deliver, not display, and to limit exposure, yours and mine." "Whose instructions?" the supervisor asked. "The kind that come with carrier tones," Maria said. "The kind that believe bad news ages better off record." She held the woman's gaze. "If I leave it here, 3 people with temporary badges will make permanent choices. If I walk it to a civic vault, 1 person with a name will sign for it. You look like you enjoy being a name." A long beat. In the emergency blue, the supervisor's face looked carved. Then she sighed. "Dockside policy says I refuse vague, dangerous, and late." She held out her hand for the manifest. "Civic policy says I refuse nothing with a chain of custody. We'll do this the civic way." Maria nodded once. Gratitude kept small enough to fit behind her teeth. "Route? Vault transit," the supervisor said. "Service corridors. Less eyes, less rumors." Her mouth twitched. "And less drones." She turned to the dockhands. "You didn't see this. You will, however, file a very detailed report about a power ripple and my admirable response." The dockhands saluted with the solemnity of people who knew their pay scale. The supervisor gestured, and the service corridor door sighed open. Maria thumbed the crate's field to minimum and felt it push back, reluctant to be dim, eager to be known. "Later," she murmured, and the hum softened as if a promise had been made. They moved. The corridor smelled of dust, coolant, and old heat. Pipes whispered against the walls. Footsteps kept honest time. Behind them, Gamma 7 smells faded from the ship, and ahead, Terra Nova's civic scent grew stronger. Citrus, sanitizer, coffee, arguments. The crate kept time with all of it. A second heartbeat in a place that pretended to have none. A service corridor to the civic vaults was the kind of place stations built and then forgot, narrow as a promise, warm with old heat, humming with the private lives of pipes. The supervisor badge name, Helene Cho, walked ahead, step precise, shoulders square. Maria pushed the grav sled with the crate settled on it, the mag seals whispering faintly against the deck. The blue emergency wash had dimmed to a cautious amber, but the crate kept its side of the sky, its lines breathing light, its hum an argument made under breath. "Ms. Santos," Cho said without looking back, "if this is a bomb, I will be upset." "If this is a bomb," Maria said, "we will be a lesson." She nudged the sled around a bend. "It's an artifact. Active. It wants to be somewhere. Not here." "That sentence made me nervous in 4 different ways," Cho replied. "Congratulations." 2 decks down, a junction door refused their credentials. Cho tried again, more out of politeness than hope. "Power ripple," she said. "Grids gating non-priority traffic." She took a breath, tasted dust and citrus, and tapped a code so old it felt like a rumor. The door opened because rumors in civic systems are often true. On the other side waited a man with a maintenance kit and the expression of someone who had just decided to be brave later. He saw the crate, saw the blue in the air, and set his kit on the floor very carefully. "Do I need to know?" he asked. "No," Cho said. "You need to forget." "I'm excellent at that," he said, and stepped aside. People always made room for things that made the air different. They reached a lift that ran like a vein straight to the vault level. The panel flickered, then resolved to a clean green. "Look at that," Cho said. "Something works." The doors whispered shut, and the lift began its quiet descent. Maria found herself counting seconds, a habit from runs through unfriendly ports. 7 to the next stop, 12 to the one after. A human body loves patterns. A courier survives by not trusting them. The hum in the crate changed key. Maria felt it in the space behind the ears where headaches are born. She almost asked it what it wanted, and then remembered who she was talking to and where. The lift slowed, not at a floor, but mid-shaft. The lights did not fail so much as blink, like an eye that had decided to lie. "Of course," Cho said. She pulled a manual release, and then the backup manual release, and finally the emergency manual of the backup manual release. The doors remained committed to discretion. "We're not trapped," she informed the universe. "We're paused." A hatch in the ceiling clicked. A small sphere dropped into the lift, unfolded once, and looked at them with a lens like a patient pupil. Cho didn't move. Maria didn't either. The sphere hummed, sniffed the room, and then fixed on the crate. "Inspection unit," Cho said. "Not ours. It's curious," Maria said. "It's illegal," Cho said, which was a kind of curiosity. She showed the sphere her badge. It took a picture of the badge, and then of her face, and then of Maria's hands on the sled. "This is a civil lift," Cho told it. "You're trespassing." The sphere extended a filament, thin as a breath, toward the crate. Maria stepped between. The filament paused delicately, an inch from her jacket, tasting the air. She held its invisible gaze. "No," she said, not loud. "You don't touch what you can't carry." The sphere considered the arithmetic of that sentence. Then it withdrew the filament, rotated a degree, and played a carrier tone that made Maria's vision go narrow at the edges. The crate answered, not with sound, but with presence. The lift shivered once, sharp, decided, and the doors opened onto vault level as if manners had returned to engineering. The sphere fled upward through the hatch like a thought. Someone later pretended they never had. Cho exhaled. "That wasn't ours," she repeated, as if repetition might make the universe rewrite. "Security breach? Interest," Maria said. "Security arrives with boots. Interest arrives with toys." They moved into a corridor that had opinions about being quiet. Cameras watched the part of the world that could be argued about in court. Cho palmed doors open. Cooling coils breathed. Every 20 meters a strip of paint on the floor changed, color to remind visitors they were welcome until they weren't. Crate thrummed as if agreeing with the architecture. Vault B17 had a door, like a promise carved in stone. Cho keyed authorization. The door asked 3 different systems whether she was lying and decided she was not. A vault's heart exhaled. They rolled in. Inside, a room that loved numbers. Temperature in tight bands. Humidity closer to an idea than a measurement. Air turnover like a meditation. Shelves held things that made lawyers smile and historians argue treaties. Seals, memory crystals, ballots, confessionals, no longer plugged into power. In the center a pedestal waited, not dramatic, merely inevitable. Maria set the sled's brakes. The crate's glow softened, as if it had stepped into a room where voices lowered themselves. She placed a hand flat on the lid. "We're here," she said, "because people say such things." The hum eased. "Chain of custody," Cho said, and the work began. Forms, scans, countersigns. The ceremony democracy uses to keep monsters leashed. While they wrote, the vault door murmured, and then stopped murmuring. Maria's neck learned a new angle of tension. "Footsteps," she said. Cho listened. "2," she said. "No, 3. 1 heavy, 2 polite." The door asked who was there, and was told a name that made Cho grimace. The vault opened a hand's width, then wider. 3 figures stepped in. A civic security captain with boots like opinions. A slender man in gray with a smile that belonged to a committee. And between them, a woman wearing the kind of expression that meant she had never been told no in a way that stuck. "Captain Laird," Cho said, civil wariness in every syllable. "Counsel Voss, Director Illyra." Names that made walls listen. "We are mid-intake. Please wait outside." "We'll wait inside," said Director Illyra, and crossed the threshold like a signature across a line. Her gaze fell on the crate. The blue in the room leaned toward her, as if attracted by entitlement. "So, the artifact. Unlisted evidence. Pending seal," Cho said. "Chain of custody is active." "Chain of custody," Illyra repeated as if tasting a new fad. "Miss Santos, your manifest, please." Maria kept her hands on the sled. "Already logged to Civic Vault B17, she said. "My part ends with a signature. Everything interesting," the counsel in gray murmured. "Ends with a signature. Not everything," Maria said, and the crate's hum concurred. Illyra took 1 step closer to the pedestal, and the temperature in the vault seemed to notice. Not a drop, just the suggestion of a draft, the kind buildings produce when hierarchy enters. Captain Laird adjusted nothing on his armor, and nevertheless looked more armored. Counsel Voss kept his smile politely unable to commit. Cho did not move at all, which was a motion of its own. "This vault," Alira said, "is under my directive until the board convenes." Her voice made law sound like weather. "Instruments have detected an unsanctioned transmission in civic shafts. You understand my concern." "I understand you have many," Cho said. "And one door." She nodded toward the threshold. "Please." Laird's visor tracked to Maria's hands. "Step back from the crate," he said, and found out that calm requests can sound like orders when you're used to boots. Maria didn't step back. She checked the sled brake again, a gesture small enough to pretend she was only being thorough. "Chain of custody," Cho said, not louder, truer. "Interference is a violation." "Interference," Voss said pleasantly, "is a word the guilty prefer." He studied the sigil on the lid. "Then, Maria, you have delivered something you do not understand. That is the job." Maria said, "Then let those who understand conclude it," Alira said, and extended an open palm toward Laird. He moved to take the sled handle. The crate objected. It did not open. It did not glow harder. It did not sing a note that cracked glass. It simply became present in a way the human mind resolves as silence. The hum that had lived under the room under breath, under thought ceased. In its absence, all other sounds grew taller. The coil whisper, the throat clears, the soft click of Laird's glove on metal. Maria felt the silence like a weight placed carefully on the back of her neck. Alira paused. She had the predator's courtesy to pause when prey did something unexpected. "What did you do?" she asked Maria. "Honest answer?" Maria said, "Nothing." Cho moved between the pedestal and the officials by half a step, a distance that in court would have an exhibit number. "Director, you can observe. You cannot handle." "Not yet." "You imagine I require permission," Alira said. "I imagine you require deniability," Maria said, and saw Voss' eyes flicker the way a man looks when he has seen a word he can use. Laird's visor stayed on her. She could see her own reflection there. Courier's jacket, hair pulled back, grease on one cheek like a badge the ship had pinned. The silence persisted. Maria had learned on the docks that silence is a language. In bars, it means a fight. In cargo disputes, it means someone has found the gun. In vaults, it means the room is listening to the most powerful thing in it. She leaned close enough to the crate to fog it with her breath. "We are in a room designed to keep promises," she said under the hum that was not there. "Behave." The crate resumed its low presence, the way a large animal agrees not to break a chair. Air returned to ordinary. "Enough theater," Alira said, which is what people say when the audience begins to prefer the other actor. "Captain." Laird moved again. Cho lifted a palm. "Captain Laird, if you touch that sled before custody completes, I will put your name on a document I will enjoy seeing for the rest of my career." The captain's boots remained opinions rather than actions. Voss took the lane the silence had opened. "Director, allow process. If this object matters as much as your sources suggest, an unbroken chain serves us. A broken one serves someone else." Alira folded and unfolded her hand, a motion like someone remembering how fists work. "Very well," she said. "Proceed, but the board meets in 2 hours. If intake is not complete, I will complete it." "Understood," Cho said, which can mean many things. She placed the scanner pad on the pedestal. The crate pulsed once the pad blinked acceptance. Numbers crawled, mass, temperature, field differential, linguistic probability. A line labeled harmonic index climbed to a polite red and hovered there like a guest with sharp elbows. "What is it?" Voss asked. "A problem that won't leave," Cho said. Maria watched the scanner. The glyphs on the lid were not merely decorations. They were a map, and the map was changing as the scanner looked. Lines re-weighted. Intersections' subtlety thickened. A gap opened like a held breath between 3 nested curves. She had mapped cities by smell, routes by taste of air, clients by the coins they didn't tip. She felt the pattern and didn't like it. "It's planning," she said. Voss turned. "The artifact?" "All of you," Maria said. "Me, the lift, the drones that looked, and the sphere that fled. It's writing what happens next, so the room will believe it when it arrives." "Artifacts do not plan," Alira said. "Humans weren't supposed to fly," Maria said. "Yet here we are, Director." "And here it is." The scanner chimed. "Chain of custody. Complete." The crate eased as if given permission to breathe in public. Cho signed. Maria signed. Voss watched and did not sign. Elira's hand hovered, and then settled. "Now," she said. The vault door whispered again, not opening, only discussing the idea with itself. Footsteps beyond it, quick, many. Not boot heavy, shoe fast. Cho's gaze went to the ceiling mic. Security? No answer. The lights took on the blue again, not from the crate this time, but from the vents. The seams, the places buildings keep their secrets. Interest, Maria said softly. Not our interest. The crate warmed under her palms. She looked at the glyph gap that hadn't been there a minute ago, and knew, the way couriers know, when an overcomplicated job has introduced itself as a trap. "Director," Maria said, "if you want deniability, take 3 steps back and pretend to be surprised." Elira did not move. By what? By the thing that always arrives when rooms get too honest. The other claimant. They heard the other claimant before they saw it. A hush that moved like weather under doors. The way a crowd's intention can precede the crowd. Then the vault's intercom coughed to life and spoke a language that was not a language, tones braided into meaning. The glyphs on the crate answered in kind, lines thickening where the tones touched. "What is that?" Voss asked, voice small enough to fit behind his teeth. "Negotiation," Maria said. "Old kind." The vault door opened as if every hinge had taken a class in politeness. 3 figures entered in single file. The first was tall and jointed in slightly the wrong places, wrapped in a garment that behaved more like shadow than cloth. The second was shorter and wore nothing like clothing at all, but carried a staff of braided wire that hummed sympathetically with the crate. The third was the sort of being stations invented diplomatic protocols to avoid describing incorrectly. Clear, faceted, refracting the vault's blue into brief rainbows that died on the floor. Cho's badge lifted itself a millimeter, as if eager to help. "Identify," she said. The tall one inclined its head, a movement that mirrored a bow without submitting to it. The translator on Cho's lapel worked hard for its living. "We. Our claimants under treaty lines not frequently read," it said, voice like sand made articulate. "The object you shelter was taken from our keeping in a century when your species had not. Learned the word vote in your current sense." Elira stepped forward, because power hates to share its air. "Director Elira," she said, "Board of Terra Nova. This is a civic vault. Your grievance is noted. Our wound is not a grievance," said the faceted one, and when it spoke the room felt cooler. "It is a continuity interrupted." Its gaze, if light can be called a gaze, tilted toward Maria. "This one carries it without breaking." "That is unusual. I deliver without knowing," Maria said. "It's a skill." "No," the being said. "It is a trust." Cho placed her hand open on the scanner pad. "Chain of custody is complete," she said. "Civic law says the object remains until adjudication." The braided staff figure lifted its wire. The crate hummed like an answered name. "Civic law," it said, tone souring on the last syllable. "Your law is a curtain. We request the room behind it." "Request denied," Elira said, and found herself unheard, the worst insult to someone like her. The tall one turned to Maria. "You felt it think?" it asked. Maria kept her shoulders loose. "I felt it plan." "It is not the object that plans," the tall one said. "It is the grammar inside it. It writes futures and makes them obedient." "Then we all should be elsewhere," Cho said, "because rooms with obedient futures get messy when futures change their minds." Faceted one moved closer to the pedestal. Light crawled over its surface and wrote syllables on the lid. They did not match the crate's glyphs. They offered them a chair. "You housed it in a place that respects chains," it said. "Wise. The thing inside can only plan with what it has touched. Vaults have touched everything treaties, ballots, confessions. It has food here." Maria's fingers tightened on the sled handle. Her mind jumped lanes in the way long-haul drivers learn. Not from A to B to C, but A to C, to what lives behind B. "If we move it," she said, "we starve it. It will eat whatever carries it," the braided one said, not unkindly. "Be careful what you volunteer." Maria looked at Cho. Cho's eyes said the word she would not say. "Help." Voss' smile had lost the ability to pretend. Elira's hands had learned smallness for the first time in years and did not enjoy the lesson. "Treaty lines not frequently read," Cho said, buying seconds. "I can read them. I have a terminal and a stubbornness." Stubbornness. The tall one murmured. A new word it turned over like a coin beneath the tongue. That is the human advantage, yes? Not your computers. Not even your blood's appetite for oxygen. Your refusal. Maria considered that and found it accurate enough. If we refuse together, she said to Cho, we can stage this. Move the chain of custody through places it has not bitten yet. Where? Cho asked. Every corridor between here and an exit is a meal, not an exit, Maria said. A circle. Her hands mapped an old delivery in the air. One she had run through a hab block during a riot when corridors became arguments and arguments became fires. A loop with a choke point, only we can widen. Force it to plan around a fixed throat. Then when it plans for us, we change our throats. Alira blinked. This is contraband metaphysics. This is logistics, Maria said. She nodded at the braided staff. You called it a grammar. Grammars hate ambiguity until they own it. We can be ambiguous faster than it can eat. The faceted one made a small, delighted sound like a sun catching a prism. This is why we asked, it said to its companions. Their machine speak is clumsy. Their will is articulate. Cho's terminal chimed, the way terminals do when laws try to make themselves heavier by showing up. Treaty lines not frequently read, she said, scrolling through text older than the paint on the station. There is a provision. Temporary shared custody under conditions of active harm with civic officer present. You three qualify as claimants if you can prove continuity. The tall one tapped the staff once. The crate answered with a pattern. That made Maria's skin prickle a rhythm her bones had known for all of 8 hours and had learned anyway. Continuity, it said without saying. The vault accepted the argument because the room was full of precedent, and precedent is just continuity wearing a tie. Shared custody, Cho said. We move together. My badge stays. Your staff stays. Miss Santos pushes. Galera found the seam between outrage and compromise and stood in it. If you break my vault, she said, I will bury you in fines. If we do not move, Maria said, you will bury the sector in futures that did not want to be born. The crate's hum rose in approval, or appetite. Maria couldn't tell which. They left the vault like a procession no priest would bless. Civic director with jaw set to contain. Council with tablet raised like absolution. Captain with boots choosing threats. Show with the badge that made doors honest. 3 claimants from old treaties carrying wires. Angles and Shadow and Maria behind the sled. The crate a compliant sovereign acknowledging its bearers. The hall lights did not fail. They sulked. Blue bled at the seams. Cameras tried to pretend they had never seen them. The floor stripes changed color every 20 meters. Dutiful as taxes. Maria aimed for a service route that ran parallel to the public concourse. Loops, throats, choke points. She rehearsed them under her breath, the way people rehearse apologies they mean to mean. Ms. Santos. Voss said, falling into step beside her, if we survive, I would like to hire you to explain to the board how to be ambiguous. Charge by the minute, Maria said. I assumed by the miracle, Voss said, almost smiling. Ahead, the corridor widened into a T. To the left, a bank of transparent lifts that would deposit them into gossip. To the right, a narrow maintenance artery with a ceiling so low it made everyone's posture honest. Maria steered right. Behind her, Laird cleared his throat, the way men who prefer straight lines clear throats when hallways bend. Captain, Cho said without turning, your job is to be large. Please continue. Ma'am, Laird said, and was large. The maintenance artery carried the private heartbeats of the station, fluid through pipes, air through lungs, electrons through nerves. A hatch ahead wore 3 lock styles from 3 different decades, like bracelets from lovers you never quite broke up with. Cho palmed 2, keyed the 3rd, and the hatch thought about it before choosing to be helpful. Beyond lay a catwalk over a core vent. Heat stropped the air to a shimmer. The crate thrummed and the shimmering answered. Maria rolled forward. The claimants exchanged a look that said they had seen worse, and a silence that said worse had seen them back. Left fork. Short drop, utility loop, Maria said, reading the world with the same eyes she used on city blocks. Then back along our own shadow. If it wants to write us, make it copy. You are making a palimpsest of the station, the faceted claimant said, pleased. Later, archivists will hate you. Later, archivists can send invoices, Maria said. Sweat wrote new maps at her temples. The sled's bearings sang a little. She hummed back in key, because machines like to be spoken to in their own grammar. Mid-span, the world blinked. Not the lights, not the power, the world. For a fraction of a second, the catwalk was not where memory kept it. The vent below was a mouth with new teeth. Voss made a sound that belonged to old churches. Laird's hand went to a weapon and found only the idea of one. Alira's balance wavered and found its feet, because falling in front of subordinates is a scandal. Cho swore the way people swear when they realize the disaster has learned their name. Planning, Maria said. It's writing shortcuts. She tasted copper and realized she'd bitten her tongue. Stay in the loop. Do not improvise in a world that edits. The braided wire staff struck the grate once. The crate answered. The blink tried to come back and failed to sell its argument. They moved. The left fork delivered them into a utility cylinder lined with conduit. The air smelled of coolant and polite decay. Someone had written a joke on the wall in marker, and someone else had corrected its grammar. Maria found the choke point she wanted. A junction where 5 narrow routes argued about priority and a 6th route existed. Only if you knew how to step into it with conviction. Here, she said, we cut our own throat, then we widen it. That sentence, Voss observed gently, belongs in a different profession. Logistics and surgery go to the same bars, Maria said. She pushed the sled into the knot route, felt the floor disagree, and insisted. The crate loved insistence. The knot rut became a rut because a human believed in it loudly enough. The station protested alarms. Too shy to be audible in public, Cho bent the panel to her will with the weary grace of a woman who had won arguments with elevators and deputies. The tall claimant placed shadow along the seam where the world was thin. The faceted one wrote light there, threading it through rivets. The braided one set the staff in the threshold, and the hum settled into a useful key. Why is it helping us? Alira asked, and hated that the question needed asking. It is not helping, the faceted one said. It is binding. It plans to arrive where we are going by ensuring that we must go there. This is what grammars do. Make certain. Then certainty is our enemy, Cho said. Our enemy, Maria said, is lazy certainty. Let's move. They pushed through the loop and came back along their own shadow. The cameras above them wrote one story, and the floor beneath them wrote another. Maria counted heartbeats and great screws and the insistence of her breath. Couriers learn to carry 2 realities when they must, the official one on paper, and the stubborn one that arrives a live dot at the end of the loop. The station remembered its public face. A service hatch opened onto the concourse's edge tables, plants that pretended to enjoy artificial gravity, a coffee kiosk where arguments cooled. People were here. The blue at the seams dulled as if embarrassed. We can't take it public, Laird said. We take public with us, Maria said. She nodded at the kiosk. Director, buy coffee. What? Buy coffee, Maria repeated. Civic ritual. Witnesses. Noise the grammar can't edit without eating 1,000 receipts. Alira hesitated, then moved with the speed of someone who understood power as performance. She ordered 2 carafes and 6 cups, the way officials buy penance. People turned to look. Witnesses arrived, because smell travels faster than policy. The crate thrummed behind Maria like a cathedral organ, deciding to play something loud. She smiled at a child who stared, and the child's mother decided this was ordinary enough to permit. Make the world thick, Maria said softly. Thick things are hard to rewrite. The concourse absorbed them the way a crowd absorbs weather without consent, with consequence. Steam rose from the coffee kiosk in polite ghosts. The child who had stared at the crate kept staring, then forgot to when the barista handed over a cinnamon roll large enough to vote. The blue at the seams retreated to the corners, like a rumor that had met daylight. Maria felt the grammar inside the crate adjust its appetite. Crowds are messy. Messy is nutritious, but hard to chew. Alira returned with 2 carafes and an expression that suggested she had invented coffee. Civic hospitality, she announced to no one and everyone, and poured for Cho first, because Cho was the kind of hierarchy the room understood. Laird took a cup and remembered how to hold something that wasn't a weapon. Voss cradled his like it could absolve. The claimants declined, each according to their physics. Asterisk witnesses, Maria said. Not loud, but aimed at the nearest dozen onlookers. Routine transfer to the civic vault. Nothing to see, Everyone looked harder, because humans are obedient until told not to watch. The crate's glyphs softened in the concourse light. Lines like tide pools at afternoon. A street musician, on the far side of the plaza, plucked a stringed instrument built from something that had once been a cargo frame. The note bent, found the vault's hum, and did not shatter. Harmony by accident is how cities survive. Then the station did something Maria had seen planets do, and courts do, and marriages do. It forgot, not all at once patchy, as if remembering were expensive, and the budget had tightened. The directory screens stuttered into a yesterday's schedule. The air handlers sighed the wrong cycle for a breath. Conversations tripped, repeated, corrected. A man bumped his own future self and apologized. "Freeze," Laird said to the air, because soldiers fight first with words. The claimants simultaneously turned their heads, not to the glitching signs, but to the floor. The faceted one spoke without sound, the way light speaks to the back of an eye. The braided staff tasted the air and frowned. "It's planning with people," Maria said, throat dry. "We gave it witnesses. It's trying to draft them." "Can it?" Alira asked, and hated how small her voice sounded. "If they are thin enough," the tall claimant said. "Thicken them," Maria said. "Stories, names, exchanges. Make the grammar pay full price." Voss, to his own surprise, obeyed first. He stepped onto a kiosk stool, held up his cup like a toast, and said, "By order of the Civic Council's office, this plaza is now a procedural annex. If you have a name, keep it on your tongue. If you have a receipt, hold it. If you have a friend, touch them." He smiled. For real this time. "If you don't, borrow one." It worked because it was ridiculous, and therefore human. People laughed, and laughter is a signature the universe recognizes. Arms reached, hands found hands. Names were said in the old ritual of introductions. Jacques, May, Talia, Wren. The child told the crate her name in a whisper, and the crate pretended not to listen. The forgettings shortened. The directory remembered the right noon. The air remembered the right breath. The musician bent his note again and found it easier. Cho checked her terminal and discovered that treaty lines not frequently read had begun to annotate themselves with case law that did not exist yet. "It's writing precedent," she said, and her delight frightened her. "Stop that," she told the terminal. "You earn your verbs." From the far end of the concourse, the station sent a different kind of interest. Not drones, not spheres. People in civic jackets whose eyes were the wrong kind of calm. They moved like a sentence that had already decided its period. Laird slid a half step to put his boots between the crate and the sentence. "Another claimant?" Alira asked. "Local," Maria said. "The kind that believes custody is a synonym for possession." The lead jacket raised a bland little badge. "Artifact Transfer Authority," she said. "Pursuant to emergency code, we are authorized to relieve this plaza of burdensome objects. Civic Vault Protocol supersedes emergency. Code for items in intake," Cho replied. "Because law is a blade, and she knew where to swing. And this plaza is a procedural annex." She pointed at Voss, still holding court with a paper cup. "Witnesses present." The lead jacket's eyes did not blink in the places eyes prefer to. "Annex revoked. Annex remembered," said the child, with the solemn cruelty of the very young. The crowd laughed again. The grammar inside the crate had to pay. The lead jacket made a small hand motion. Two of her people moved to flank. The braided claimant set the staff quietly on the tiles. It hummed. The plaza's floor answered. The lead jacket paused, recalculated, tried to find a segment of reality she owned outright. "Ms. Santos," Voss said softly, "if you have a next move, take it." Maria did not have a next move. She had 1,000 small ones, which is different and arguably better. "We loop again," she said. "But now we carry part of the crowd with us." "Logistically impossible," Alira said. "Which is what administrators say when they want to be saved from themselves." "Procedurally brilliant," Voss said, because he had recovered his sense of play. "Annex walks." He turned back to the witnesses. "Procedural annex is relocating. If you are holding a name, bring it. If you are holding a friend, do not drop them. If you are holding a receipt, congratulations. You are now part of the budget." The musicians struck a marching chord. It wasn't a march. It was better. They moved as a slow, untidy comet, crate at the nucleus. Civic and claimant gravity, bending people into a tail. The artifact's hum adjusted, annoyed, pleased, hungry, sated. Maria couldn't separate the flavors. She aimed the procession through a corridor that would force the grammar to predict which piece of the annex mattered most. The answer would be wrong. That was the point. At the junction by the memorial wall, the station tried again to forget. The names engraved there refused. A place made of names doesn't erase itself cheaply. Maria felt the crate falter, like a clever liar seeing a photograph. "Can't eat the dead," she said. "Nothing does," the tall claimant said gently. Stopped in front of the wall, because stopping is also movement when the world expects rush. Maria put her palm against the cold list of lives and let the cool push back through her skin. "Read," she said to the annex. Aloud, voices rose, halting, overlapping. Names filled the corridor until the forgettings had nowhere to sit. The crate was very quiet. The lead jacket took one step back, as if distance could be a strategy. "Move," Maria said at last, and the annex moved, thicker than grammar, heavier than certainty. The route dipped under a skylight that believed in stars more than light fixtures. Beyond, a transit spindle spun slowly, sending capsules out along spoke lines to departments with budgets that resented each other. Maria steered left into a maintenance loop barely wide enough for the sled. Cho and Alira compressed their authority to fit. Laird compressed everything else. The blue at the seams tried once more to breathe. The braided staff touched the wall, and the wall answered with a sound like a contract clearing its throat. "It wants us to declare destination," the staff bearer said. "We decline," Maria said. "We're still deciding what we want." The faceted claimant paused by a conduit junction, angling itself until the reflection from its body sent thin spectral lines through the crate's glyphs. "It translates light into sequence," it murmured. "Old trick. It cannot translate laughter easily, or grief. It can only model them after it has eaten them. You keep changing the recipe." "Good," Maria said. "I intend to burn dinner." Cho's terminal refused 3 updates in a row and then, insulted, provided maps of paths that did not exist yesterday. "It's surrendering corridors to us," she said, amused in the way professionals are amused when the universe admits a mistake. "Or it wants us there, both," Voss said, "which is how manipulation works." They re-entered a public artery at an angle that made the annex stutter and regnate. The coffee carafe sloshed. Someone apologized to a potted tree. The lead jacket and her ATA cohort arrived at the far end of the hall and arranged themselves into a net with holes where dignity used to be. Laird moved to intercept, and Maria put a hand on his elbow. "No," she said. "Not boots. Words." He looked offended in the way soldiers do when deprived of their grammar, then nodded, because good soldiers learn other languages. Alira inhaled to speak, and Maria shook her head. "You negotiate power," she said. "We negotiate attention." Voss, understanding faster each time, stepped forward. "Artifact Transfer Authority," he called pleasantly. "We respect your concern. Please file it in triplicate with the annex. We are accepting all concerns at this time." "You can't," the lead jacket began. "You're doing great." Voss said over her, "This is the transparency portion of the emergency." He pointed to a teenager with a drone camera. "You, archivist, document." The teenager, granted a title, trembled into competence. The AdaNet recoiled from the lens. The crate's hum warmed at the amateur's steady hand. Maria felt the grammar inside it, trying to choose a main character and failing. She made the next loop hard down a stair. Not wide enough for a sled, unless the person pushing it believed in geometry as suggestion. The annex compressed and flowed. The musician found the stair's note and played it badly, which was perfect. At the landing, a janitor with a mop stepped aside and saluted with the solemnity of those who clean after better uniforms have left. Maria saluted back with 2 fingers and made a space in her mind where that man would not be edited out. "How do we end this?" Alira asked, not to cede control, but to schedule it. "Endings are for stories that stop," Maria said. "We're aiming for maintenance." The faceted claimant brightened with appreciation. "Sustainable denial." "Exactly," Maria said. "We deny it the one big meal by feeding it crumbs it can't swallow." They reached a service ring that circled the station's oldest core, a wedge of architecture that predated budgets, made by hands that had known how to keep atmosphere inside by wanting it badly enough. The ring's paint remembered other colors. The crate grew very still, the way predators go still when the wind changes. This is where? Cho asked. Here is before the station learned to be polite, Maria said. Here everything squeaks like truth. If it can't plan here, its grammar starves. Elira's mouth formed the beginnings of a protest, and then remembered that her vault, had survived because stubborn engineers had built ugly, honest rooms first. She nodded once, the way proud people nod when they meet something older than pride, not the NX slowed. People peeled away politely, eating jobs and naps and other annexes. Enough stayed. Witnesses are a renewable resource when you treat them like neighbors, not fuel. The child stayed because cinnamon rolls come with courage. The lead jacket did not enter the ring. Her cohort leaned toward her, murmuring the numbers that fund careers. They retreated 2 steps and discovered that retreat was not the same as losing. They wrote it down for later. Maria placed both hands on the crate. The glyphs there had learned her fingerprints and did not flinch. Here's the deal, she said, speaking to grammar. You can plan inside this ring as much as you like. This ring is a loop. We are loops. You can't arrive. You can only orbit. The staff-bearer's wire hummed approval. The faceted one sent a clean column of light through the lid, pinning the dancing glyphs like butterflies. The tall one's shadow wrapped the base of the sled and anchored the whole assembly to the floor's ugly. Honesty. The crate tried to forget the ring. The ring remembered itself. It tried to eat the annex. The annex burped and told a joke. It tried to nominate a hero, and the hero spilled coffee. It tried to flatten time, and the child asked for the bathroom. It tried patience, and found itself underfed. Maria exhaled a breath she hadn't admitted she was holding. The humming settled into background. The blue, it seems, gave up and turned into light fixtures again. The station schedule stopped stuttering and did the boring miracle of telling people where to be. Elira looked at Maria as if seeing the shape of a future resignation letter and the person she would name as successor. Now what? She asked. Now we keep it here, Maria said, until the people who lost it prove they can keep it better. The tall claimant inclined its head, a bow this time. Continuity restored through refusal. We will write that. Write it on paper, Cho said. I like the sound of filing cabinets. On stone. If you have it, Maria said, and ran a palm along the ring's old paint. Things that don't update themselves are hard to lie to. The ring held. The crate sulked. The annex breathed like a living organism that had learned how to keep itself from being edited. Maria Santos wiped her palms on her jacket and let the ugly, honest air of the old core scrape her lungs clean. Solutions here would not be elegant. They would be sturdy. Logistics, she said to Cho, to Elira, to the claimants, to the crowd that had volunteered as reality. We don't beat its grammar with bigger grammar. We starve it with rooting. Explain, Elira said, tone brisk by habit, softer by necessity. It plans by sampling what it touches, Maria said. So we make it touch boring things in repeating sequences with just enough noise that it can't compress. Think bus schedules in the rain. Think laundry that never finishes. Think line at immigration when the printer jams. Voss half laughed, despite himself. Weaponized bureaucracy. Weaponized routine, Maria corrected. Bureaucracy loves certainty. We need the opposite predictable unpredictability. Loops that vary by human decision. Not algorithm. Cho's eyes brightened the way mechanics do at a puzzle the manual forgot to cover. We can build that. 3-point route around the ring. Service gate C, inventory ledge 2, archive spur. Different badge each pass. Hand the crate between custodians at fixed intervals timed to humans, not clocks. Interrupt the sequence with civic ritual signatures, call and response coffee. The tall claimant tilted its head. Your species turned survival into liturgy. That's called culture, Voss said. Suddenly protective, Maria tapped the sled. We make a rota. Not military, not corporate. Neighborhood watch with paperwork. She pointed to bystanders who were doing their best to be citizens. You, with the drone archivist, right? You document each handoff. You, janitor custodian. You count steps. Child witness. You say when we're late, because children always know. The child, solemn with responsibility, nodded like an ambassador receiving a planet. Elira bristled at the decentralization, then stopped herself. Command had gotten them to the ring. Community would keep them there. Directorate will authorize rotating custodians, she said, and meant it. Cho, draft the intake addendum. Voss, make it look like we planned this. Already writing minutes, Voss said, thumbs flying. Title, Emergency Annex Continuity Protocol, EACP. It sounds expensive. Boards love expensive. Laird looked like a man who had been asked to hold a kitten and discovered it had accepted him. Where do boots go? Maria pointed to the ring's 3 thin points, where the old steel admitted it had limits. Here, here, and here. Not to fight, to anchor. If something edits the floor, you remember it back with your weight. Stand like you mean your gravity. The braided claimant planted the staff at the first point. The floor hummed a note that might have been pride. The faceted one refracted a triangle of light to the second.